All right, so this is the Moment Rediscovered. My name is Joe Bowers. Thank you, Jimmy Stark, for coming out. This is awesome, man. So you watched the first guy do it. Now you're not nervous now. This is live, though. This is live.
Oh, I'm ready.
So no swear words.
Right.
We're going to send this to your mom,
I'm going to do my best.
Grandpa, everybody. Send it to your kids.
Well, they've heard worse.
All right, my daughter probably talks worse than I do. So what was your first deal in real estate, and did you always know this was going to be your path?
When I was an agent, when I first started, I wasn't making any money. And I was 22, and I was trying to figure out how to make some money. And I started actually working with my wife's father-in-law, and he was just a handyman. And so I was doing roof jobs with him. I was doing anything that I could to make money at that time, because I was a new agent at 22 and nobody was trusting me to help them buy or sell a house, or I didn't have anybody in my sphere that was going to help me. None of my buddies were buying houses. None of my friends were buying houses at that time, right? I knew that I wasn't going to do that, and I was trying to figure out, how was I going to move forward in this business and maybe create opportunity for myself that wasn't there going the traditional route. So that was really what, led me into buying our first project. And it was not that I knew that I was going to do this in real estate. I think I always had hoped that I was going to be a professional soccer player. I grew up playing soccer. I was a competitor, and I went to UW and played soccer there, and I played for the Sounders for a little while. And so, that was really my passion. And unfortunately, my body didn't want to cooperate with me to continue doing that. So I was like, what am I going to do? What do I want to do that I can control? And that's where, real estate, I just kind of fell into it because another buddy of mine has started doing real estate. One of my roommates from college, and he was doing really well in it. So it made me think, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to go into real estate. I'm going to make all this money. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, right? So I thought I was going to surprise my father-in-law, with my wife, and we had bought a house, and I didn't get any inspection on it. So I bring him over there, and he's like, oh, I'm so happy for you guys, and he's like, show me around. And I'm walking around. He's got his tools there because he'd come down there because I'm like, hey, I'm going to need your help doing some work on this house to get it fixed up. And he takes a screwdriver and just pokes a hole right through the siding. And I was like, oh no, that's not good, And then we go inside the house, and like there's some wood paneling in there, pulls the wood paneling down, and there's no insulation behind it. And there's mold everywhere, So I'm like, and he's like, oh man, this is more than just a cosmetic fixer. So that was our first project that got us into doing this. So I don't know if I answered your question there. I might have got off track a little bit.
Oh, it's all right. What's the biggest misconception people have about flipping?
I think social media now is, there's so much information. It seems like everybody's having all this success, and it's really tough. I think there's not nearly as many people that are successful at it as what it looks like. I'd say for every one person that does a deal and doesn't make money, the hard part is there's 10 more people lined up behind them right now to replace that, that person. So it's definitely making it more challenging, right now to do projects.
Yeah, there's a huge misconception with like social media and like the over glorification of it and how it's easy. And there's all these seminars, they say it's like, can't remember the exact numbers, but the amount of people go to seminars, so out of like 200 people, 2 people actually make a deal or pull the trigger, or, it's like 10% are serious. Now those 10, maybe 2 will, actually do a deal, but, I was talking about the wholesalers earlier. It's like, there's all this stuff out there that you take it at face value and don't know what you're doing. They're getting set up for failure. Like, if you just take these deals that are on some of these, I'm not going to call these sites out, but like some of the stuff is out there. It's like there's no money in it. if you're not buying it right? And then what if, and then where do these people get their fix-it costs from? What experience do they have?
Yeah.
Just because you flipped a couple houses, doesn't mean you know everything about rehab. But one mistake I had happen was I had bought a house right at COVID and to flip, and then everything like tripled the price. And so I was like, I'll make all this money, and then nope, broke even. It cost me a little bit of money, but it is what it is, But it's like, it's kind of like the whole misconception of the over-glorification, how easy it is. And you can do it with someone else's money. It's free. And it's not free. You got to pay points. You got to do, make the hard money loan. And people don't understand that kind of stuff. And they just kind of get way in over their head. And then, like I said, there's 10 more people lined up right behind them, eager to do it. It's so easy. Everybody else is doing it on the internet. I went to a seminar once. I'm a GC now.
Yeah.
We all took a class. We're all general contractors now. I wish they made you, made it a little more, difficult to get your GC license, in our state, just because of that. I see a lot of that kind of stuff. That leads into other stuff I deal with, but, there's a lot of bad contractors out there that just also prey on people that are flipping, because they don't know any better. They don't know what prices should be. So they have this guy that just gives random crazy stuff because he's trying to hit a home run or a grand slam on one, he gets 10 bids that are crazy. Well, who cares if he hits the one, because he's, making just a ton of money and ripping these people off. They have no idea. So they don't have any clue. They have to do a couple flips and they realize they got ripped off. By that time, I've seen people make down payments and the people run with their money, don't even do the work.
Yeah, I think, especially in the flipping side of investing, is that I'm sure that, most experienced flippers would say when they first started, there was a learning curve, and they probably do things a lot differently now, after they've done a couple projects than when they first started, being licensed contractor, using licensed contractors, making sure that the accounting side of what you're doing, if you're paying people, paying licensed people with checks, not, paying people cash, not paying people a big down payment until, if you don't know them, if it's not a vetted person, right? I think there's exceptions with, dealing with somebody for an extended period of time, but I know a lot of new investors, they're like, oh yeah, I gave the contractor a $50,000 down payment on an $80,000 job, and I'm like, how well do you know this person? You're like,
they found them on Facebook.
Yeah.
Did you do any research? You look at their DOR stuff, anything? Oh yeah, they just started 6 months ago. The new LLC with last 30 days. It's different than you go like me. I've been in business 15 years. So it's like, never changed. There's companies that'll go, they'll bankrupt themselves, you get a bunch of down payments. There's a guy that was in the news for it that did it down south, took people for millions of dollars and then bankrupted the company and now does it as another company. And it's like, he called me up for a job. Hey, you want to come? Nope, I want nothing to do with you. I don't even want to help you on a job, whether you pay me or not. I morally, I don't even want to do business with you because of that, And he was on the news for ripping people off, going on vacations and stuff and just taking people's money, And I see it all the time, because like I said, new flipper. Oh, I found something on Facebook. He has an ad on Facebook. Like, it's pretty easy. Take you a couple hours. You can have ads running and, your whole business, everything going,
Yeah, I think it's people, especially new investors, it's just making sure that they're vetting vetting contractors that they're going to be using for a project. If they're trying to sub it out themselves, or if they're using a GC, that's a little bit, easier. At least you're only dealing with one.
You still got to vet the GC though.
Yeah. But it's easier to vet one GC than, if you're starting out as a new investor and you're trying to hire an electrician, a plumber,
right,
a sider, for each part of that. I think that's why for new investors, depending on the individual, it's probably better for them to work with a VC or a GC that's been doing flips for other people.
Yeah, I recommend people all the time to do it with another person. Someone's already done it a few times, because they know, if they did it long enough, they should know the pricing. I can do, as a GC, I can do a job for somebody, a project for somebody, and make money cheaper than they can sub it out and do it all themselves, because they're going to get retail pricing for all their subs. Where I'm going to get wholesale pricing with a little bit of markup. Yeah, I'm making money, but I'm dealing with all the stress. I'm dealing with all the scheduling. Right? So yeah, you can make markup. Some people are scared to say I'm making money.
Yeah.
You got to understand, I'll save you money by working with me. I'll vet all the contractors. I take care of all of it. It's also under my bond, my insurance, which costs money, it costs money to be in business, I try to, my guys have healthcare, it's like, that's expensive. Insurance is expensive. Auto insurance is expensive. Gas, everything's materials. It's all expensive. You want good employees, or do you want some crackheads working at your house. Like you get what you pay for.
Yeah, you really do. I think, that's one of the things that comes with experience too, is that you realize what's it worth to try to cut corners and do this less expensive, and what the headaches that go along with that versus paying a licensed, bonded contractor that is going to show up and get the work done. I think that's one of the biggest things over the years for us. We realized it's like, don't try to beat down contractors on their price if you want them to show up and do a good job and get the job done in a timely manner. It's like, you'll be the last job that they'll show up at if, you spent a week or 2 weeks negotiating back and forth and getting them down to, that bottom barrel price, where if one thing goes wrong on the project, for a lot of those contractors, is that they might not come back.
Well, they'll slow roll your project, or they won't go. Like we pay. So for my company, if you submit a receipt before Thursday, you get paid by Friday. So no matter what it is, and that's a huge job. Maybe I'll have to wait and get a progress payment depending on what the work is. But 99% of the time, if they submit a receipt before Thursday, they get paid on Friday. They get a check. So like that's also paying on time. All the guys that won't pay for 30, 45, 60, 90. It's like, come on, now you're pissed. Now that you know that you're not going to do a project for that person. I feel bad for a lot of new people that I'm not trying to scare people not to do flips. It's a great thing to get into if you do it right and you get the right mentorship. You go through, actually learn, pay attention. But another thing online is real. So you got to figure out who's giving you the real advice, who's giving you the smoke. Who's full of crap. So as a design builder, how do you balance functionality and aesthetics in your projects?
That's a great question, because we really focus, every flipper or builder or investor, I think, has a different opinion or perspective. We would rather spend a little bit more time and money on a design and make a unique product, because I truly believe that people will pay a premium to get something cool and unique, right? So I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. I would rather, design a really unique product and sell less, but maybe you make more, than, be the person that is all about volume. That's not our business model. That's not what we do. Because I think whenever we spend a little bit more time on a project, people come through our projects and, I feel fortunate to say they're like, oh man, this was a great design. That's one of the things that they always say when they come through our houses. And so, I think when we sell it, it has to also equate to profit as well, right? So it's great to make something, make this really cool, unique house. So, I think my wife and I are a good team in the sense that I would try to make it like this crazy, insane design. And she's like reeling me back in a little bit, in a good way, to say, hey, let's find some, let's do that, but let's make it, appeal to a few more people.
Yeah, happy medium a little bit.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that we really focus on for our business when we're doing these projects.
Yeah, I remodeled my house and I went a little overboard. I was not intending on selling it though. I just put it up for sale last week, but so I went a little overboard because it's like, it's obnoxious, and I've spent way too much money on stuff. And like we took some stuff with us, like my faucet was like $5,500 for my kitchen faucet or something, but I took it out, put a regular faucet in. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, you gotta figure out the happy medium, because like there's a little bit to be said about, like I want to be able to do for myself, I want to do some higher end cool stuff. I really want to do the cool stuff. I want to do something where someone drives by it and they're like, it leaves an impression, and they think about it for weeks or months or years. And they remember that house. Like my new house I just bought that I'm doing a huge remodel on. It's a one-off house. It's on a private airstrip. It's got this weird silo thing on it. It's cool. It's gonna be insane. We're gonna do the whole thing. We're actually hired a designer to do it, and do it the right way. I designed the other house myself, and it's cool. Everything looks cool. It's just not. There's stuff I probably could have saved money on that I didn't. I went overboard and spent way too much money.
It's funny because we've moved a lot. I've moved I've probably lived in 7 houses in the last like 14 years. So almost every 2 years that we've moved, probably a little bit more, maybe 16 years we've been in 6 or 7 houses. And when you're doing a house for yourself, it just changes the whole dynamic. It's actually funny because people ask me sometimes, oh, hey, could you, do a project for us, like a custom build for a customer? And we don't do that, because I know how challenging it is to do those projects for people when it's their personal house that they're living in. Because we did this on our house. We come up with an idea. Oh, this is so cool. And I'm like, oh, but now we want to change this. Now we want to change that. And so it's funny that when it becomes your personal house and you're doing it for what you want, it's sometimes you're like, it doesn't matter what this thing costs. Like, I'm putting it in there.
Yeah, but you have to kind of have to think about the end user a little bit. So that the next spot we're buying, we're not selling until I die. So, but how old are you? Okay,
43.
Every 2 years.
Yeah,
That's insane, dude.
Well, there were some years that I think we moved 2 or 3 times in like 14 months, all on the same street. Is actually a funny story. We had bought this house and fixed it up, and this was right after the market had crashed. And we jacked it up, lifted the whole house up, where they put pilings underneath it, and then you jack it up, and then you reframe it. And old craftsman, now you wouldn't save this house because it's just, the cost for doing those kinds of remodels aren't really feasible now. But so we did that, and then a house came up down the street, and I was like, gosh, like, Missy, like, this is a little bit nicer than what, we could make this even cooler than the house we're in. And what was great is that, moving, a block away is like, okay, all the guys come over, pick up the stuff and walk it to the new house. And then, it wasn't even a year later, another house on that street came up for sale. And because we were door knocking, everybody also knew it's like they see the first house get fixed up, then the second one. And so this one was right across the street, this big old craftsman, and same thing. And I was like, oh gosh, like, we got to do this again, and, tax savings, right? I think that's, even if you can't sell it as a primary, paying a long-term gain for the capital gains tax, that has value still, so I think buying a house or doing a house hack, it's like there's real potential and value in that, especially when there's been a lot of appreciation during that time. It was like, that year maybe prices went up, 10, 12%, when we were doing that. So it was like, oh, okay, this is a substantial amount of tax savings to make this transition, make it worth it.
Right. So your wife's here. Does she hate your guts when you did that, or is she about it? Was she for it? Like, on your side, or does she have a little pushback?
I'm always having to convince her to move and talk her into it. And it's a slow process. The house we're in now, it's actually it's the coolest house that we've ever been in. It's like a piece of art. I think I was telling you a little bit about it earlier, but it's this 80s contemporary house that we had bought, and this bank had taken it back, and they were selling it as a teardown. And I went over there and I called her and I was like, oh my God, this house is incredible. Like, we got to buy this house. We bought it as a project at first. And I took her over there, and we were working on it for like a month, and I'm like, okay, now's the time to start slowly working this angle, and I'd be like, isn't this street so great? Isn't this imagine, do this. And so yeah, that was a cool, a great project that also, then again, it turned into another primary. So that was another project that we'd moved into because it was like, it just made sense. And we sold the previous house, in conjunction with this move. And it was like another, huge tax savings in making that move, that it was like, okay, financially, and then also like, what an amazing, house to be able to live in.
Yeah, my wife cried. My kids cried. No, we just finished. We just finished the house. Like, there's still a couple of things I didn't even finish, So it's like, just got it done.
Yeah.
And then, all right, we're moving again. We're moving all this house. Where are we gonna live? Motorhome. Again? Maybe, finish the house. I don't know. We have another house in Puyallup. We have a house in Tacoma that we're redoing. We can stay in one of those houses. I don't know.
The hardest sell when I had her move was when we had to move back into her parents' garage. It was a 10 by 20, single car garage. And she was, I think she was like 6 months pregnant. And I was like, hey, we're going to sell the house and we got to figure out where we're going to go. And it was in transition because we were working on another house that we were going to move into, but it wasn't done yet. And I was like, we got to sell this house now. The market, the timing with the market, things were starting to change, and it's like opportunity, right? Sometimes you're just like, making those moves makes a difference. And, that's what actually got us into the next one after that.
So I always like to ask people, what was that one time that you had to rediscover yourself and like really dig in, kind of like, knuckle up and either, survive,
I think anybody that's been in real estate for any extended period of time, there's so many different transitions and cycles that happen while you're doing this business. It's not just necessarily any one time for me. I think every time there was a shift in the market, a significant shift, it was, for us, we would really look at what we were doing and be like, okay, does it make sense to still do flips? Should we be doing new construction? Should we be doing, changing our business, which, for us, my wife and I both, are working in this business together. That affects everything we do. And, I don't know that there's any other than us making that sacrifice when we first moved into the first project that we did, that kind of set us on this path, for having to gut and fix up this house, learn that whole process of, redoing this house while living in there, and then being like, I think we can do this at, full time as a business. And then her coming into the business and doing it with me. So we were doing it together. So that's probably...
Yeah, living in a flip is a nightmare.
Yeah.
I bought my first house at 20, and it was a total remodel, dude. It was in Hilltop, Tacoma, and it was bad. It was super bad. And we called it the frat. I had 5 buddies living there with me. And so trying to fix the house while everybody's are drinking and partying and trashing the house at the same time, it was just always a nightmare. Like, fix it, and then someone put their hand through a window or kick a door down. It's like, it was bad. So the last question I'm going to ask is, what is one deal or project that you're most proud of, and why?
I would say the project we're most proud of is the one that we moved into now. It was a project that it's a house that we had bought as a project originally.
Well, you had plans already.
Well, and
you can tell her now.
But I think what's funny is that you always, in real estate, you have to be willing to change direction quickly.
I use the phrase "rock in a river."
Or so 1 second, it might be your plan, and being ready to, change your plan because another opportunity comes up. I think taking advantage of those opportunities has made a big difference for us. It's like that moving into some of those projects that we got done. The difference is, X amount on a project versus staying there for 2 years, selling it, and then allowing you to do these other things with your business. That was kind of what I think helped us no matter what was going on with the market. You
kind of got to go with the flow, like I use this phrase a lot lately, it's God's plan, not my plan. My plan gets me in trouble. I just go with the flow a lot, so my family, like, it was a huge, like I said, my daughter, it was emotional. So there's a little more to the story. We tried buying another house on the same airport last year, and the deal fell through. Some stuff happened with my accountant I was talking about earlier. My accountant, I got hit with last year $685,000 tax bill I knew nothing about. So I heard a chuckle behind me. So yeah, $685,000. So I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't buy a house now. I need to figure this out. We got it all fixed, taken care of. It's all done. But so I didn't know what I was doing. So that was a little emotional. So I don't know where we're staying now. Now we're not gonna leave. And then I found this house I've been looking at for 10 years. I ran into the guy, had it under contract, and so I bought it. But it's like, everyone's like, what are you gonna do? What's the plan? Like, I don't know yet. Because if I sell my house, and I have 2 other houses that if I sell them all, I have way more enough cash to pay for the house cash. And I don't have to worry about having a mortgage payment. Then I can do the full rehab and have like a revolving line of credit to use for flips and whatever. So I should have a house payment, So like, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I don't know the plan until I make the plan. But trust me, it'll be the right idea. It's whatever God's plan is, that's what I'm going to go with. I don't know what the plan is. I have all these ideas. There's 10 different exit strategies we can go with. Whatever it is. Whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that's how you have to be in business and life too. It's like, if you're getting stuck in one place for too long, that's how people get caught, I think, and get into trouble.
Yeah.
Not thinking about, oh, am I doing this right? What should I be doing different? Is this the right thing for me to do right now? So yeah, I totally understand that.
So I got one more question.
Yeah.
So if you have one piece of advice to give someone just starting, or one thing to avoid or anything, what would that be? because a lot of people are going to be watching this. I love a lot of people that are just starting that want to know that one valuable, that one golden nugget they can take away. You know, they're just watching an episode. You know,
I think anybody, you know, when you're getting into this business, one of the most important things is understanding value. So making sure that if you're going to buy a property, is you're not relying on anyone else to necessarily tell you what a property is worth. Because where I see the biggest challenges for new investors is they're getting someone that's saying, this is what this house is worth in its current condition. This is the cost that the rehab is going to be. And then this is the ARV afterwards. So the people that have, I think, managed to navigate that the best is like, they made sure that the acquisition was at the right price. So acquisition price is right. And then that they have a conservative ARV. That way there's room. The construction is always there's always surprises in construction. I think that, you know, anybody that's in construction knows, especially on a remodel, there's going to be surprises, and you just have to know that going into it. So if your budget's $100,000, I figure, well, we're probably going to spend 120. You know,
that's exactly what I'm thinking about.
It's just like that's probably what we should plan for. And then we're not going to bank on appreciation. We're not banking that the market's going to improve in, you know, over the course of the time that we're going to sell this for, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 more than what it would sell for today. So I think that's what we're always looking at. What is this thing worth right now? And then what is it worth if we were to sell it today? And maybe being a little bit more conservative in a market like this.
Well, and definitely being conservative, because people look at the high number. Oh, yeah. I'll look at all these different platforms, and the highest number I saw was 667. So that's what I'm going with. No, you should probably go with the lowest one you found. Yeah. You know, or you talk to 3 different real estate agents, pick the lowest one. That's the number you should do all your numbers off of, and then hope that you get the sell for the higher amount. Yes, but if you don't, at least you're breaking even, or you're not breaking even. You know, maybe you're making 8%, and then if you sell a higher amount, you're making 25, 30%. Cool. But at least you made made it. So
yeah, I think, you know, when we first started, the way that I would look at stuff was worst case scenario. If the market, I would always say this to myself, I still repeat this sometimes. If the market was to tank, could I at least break even on this deal? That's maybe not the right way to look at it, but in my mind, that's how it's like, okay, we know we're going to make money. How much money are we going to make? And just making sure that we're being conservative with the numbers that we're running, you know, for construction, for the acquisition, and for the resale after it's done. So,
well, thank you, man. I really appreciate you coming. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure, man.